How can you provide a seat at the table for everyone and a voice of decision without pushing aside those who are already rightfully at the table? And I thought, well, that's a pretty good question. And my response was, well, we'll simply build a larger table. And that's what we tried to do. And we tried to do so by having a county government that was more reflective of the broader community, by reaching out across the board to all segments of our community, making sure that we were as inclusive as possible.
It doesn't take everybody to change the culture. You get enough people on it that others begin to want to understand what's going on. A tipping point, it makes all. And then when people at a community college or a high school or a family can see my son or daughter can come there and do really well, they want to send the next person, the next brother or sister. The sense of community for us involves giving students ways of being able to try, experiment, and have others around them so that when they get knocked down, they can be picked back up and keep going rather than flunking out, for example.
For so many Americans, particularly low-income Americans, working class Americans, higher education remains an elusive dream for them. And that, the point we make is that is not a problem just for that individual or that family or that neighborhood. Fundamentally, that's a problem for all of us.
We need a hell of a lot more young people prepared to be successful in college, particularly from disadvantaged poor communities, and we need a lot more people prepared for the world of work. And guess what? Those skills are basically identical. It's not two different paths. I'm never about tracking at 13 you're going to work or you're not college material, you are. It's just giving young people opportunities to figure out what their passion is, what's their interest, and how we train them for the next generation of jobs. A lot of the anger you're feeling in this country is coming from people who feel left out. I think it starts because of their lack of educational opportunity. So for me, it's not just about education. It's not just about ending poverty, although that's sort of been my driving mission. But it's like, I feel like our democracy is fraying right now. And unless we take this much more seriously, we will start to have, if we don't have already, a caste system. And that's a huge challenge to a democracy.
To me, it's so much more dishonest to tiptoe around these basic truths that certain lives are held up as mattering more than others. Like, how else can we explain mass incarceration in this country and how it operates? How else can we explain police brutality? How else can we explain the little things that now are getting highlighted on social media, like people calling the police on a barbecue, or the 9-year-old who the woman called the police because she said he touched her behind in a store, and then she was lying about it, and you're just like, is this the Emmett Till story in 2018? Yeah. What's happening here? Yeah. And without social media, I think that's another thing that makes a lot of white people uncomfortable, frankly, is that social media is highlighting stories that were well known in some communities and discussed in some communities and not others.
And whatever you bring to the table, I want to learn everything I can, because I can't cure what I don't understand. I can't fight racism if I don't do that interview with that guy who's the son of a Confederate veteran. I can't fight sexism unless I do that conversation with the guy who says that he just doesn't understand the Me Too movement. It's vital, especially if you believe these things are social ills, but regardless of whether you do, how are we supposed to make sense of the things that matter to us as a democracy if we don't understand the issues?
That extra 10 cents per pound goes back to the cooperative we buy from. In this case, it's in Paraguay. And just in this past year was $500,000 that we put back into fair trade. And absolutely, that $500,000 means it was $500,000 less profit for us. But we decided that that was the right thing to do for the brand, for what we stand for, and for these sourcing communities.
Prohibition is in effect in 1920, but everyone's hoping it won't be enforced. And if they fear that if women are involved in elections, it's going to be enforced. So you see this dark money coursing through the anti-suffrage movement. Very hard to track, but there definitely are some data on it, but it's hard to track. It's dark money and nothing new.
And you probably see these same monies in the Reconstruction era, moving into suffrage movement and post-suffrage as well, around issues of race and around, and even during this period of women being contained. I would think even more so the idea of the complication of race in this becomes even more problematic. Observations you might make on this?
So the fear of what women might do with the vote
Right.
and how that fit or didn't fit with corporate
Right.
interests, as you've so pointed out.
Reminds me of what's happening on our southern border right now. I said there's some latent bigotry. There's a lot of negative propaganda put out about people. There's a separation of families. There's detention without knowing when it's going to end, right? When the Japanese Americans went into the camps, nobody knew when the war was going to end. And they weren't, so people said, well, you're going into the camp. We're at war with you guys. It was an indefinite sentence. And so I kept thinking, all these, the Japanese American experience could be a blueprint about how to do this wrong, you know, what not to do.